I just think like next Monday or two, I only have about an hour and a half, I'll put some of the 2-inch risers in front of me. The level it out levels. Nope, not when they went to that body's down. I know the first thing I look for, and there isn't any just the push bar, so.
Cool.
About
I'm
that
glad
riser
to see
kit,
it.
just to
I'm
level it.
excited.
2-inch or 3-inch.
You're gonna do the front spring push? Those
They're
underneath
the
the
U,
collar?
they're the U.
Go ahead and do
The
that.
heck, I've had them for what? 6 months?
I'm looking at it for a
A
while.
lot of guys went to the rear spring shackles to lower them, to bring the rear end down in line with the front rather than raising the front up, because it changes the geometry.
I didn't notice.
Fuck that.
You're looking for a player.
Yeah, I'm looking
Yeah.
at
For what they want, because their tasting's gonna be more than you
it.
can.
Shouldn't do anything with the toe, but
So we'll have plenty of room to park.
I got the tires rotated, brand new ones, and I go 6,000 miles, so.
But, cross that bridge and come to it. Everybody can park in front of Stein's building.
There you go.
Those tires ever on the.
We'll get signs made up, just still reparking, and put it right down there at the Jack's house.
Limit
Where
30-minute parking.
They get around a little softer, AT3s.
Handicap parking right in front of his door.
How long, like $530 an hour?
I shouldn't say that, because he's actually been pretty
Quite a
quick.
good price.
For the Coopers?
Which Kirk they got for first, she likes them.
Hey, did you see that whole
Paid
thing?
6, I think it's 6.
Yeah, I took it, I got it home, too.
I gave you another
But I
one.
assume that's
New, then I went up to Marvin.
They didn't figure $9.
Totally different.
I don't know,
Yeah, then you get
maybe
your
small
small
3/4
three-quarter.
inch, probably a little bigger size.
I think even, I didn't realize I had that one, but I thought I kept, then I remembered, I thought, oh yeah, I kept that one just to make sure, because I didn't know what the 9 would be. I tried to cut it in, I'm like, nope, it don't. You use April?
Scott, I didn't carry guns since I got my
You already had the wheels.
concealed license.
I have April for it.
I'll never, the reality is I'll never carry one.
It's gotta be.
Summer tires.
I know for a fact I won't carry. No, I'm gonna, for license season, during deer season, because I can put it in with my beds over top and leave it right here in the outside. And I have
There's a dip down here in Bel Air, they like they do guns and everything, ones out, so you can charge a wheel.
Like the powder coating? There's a place in Traverse, Scott, got the police car down there, and then there's also Donnie Patton Welding in Calcasas down there.
They get a wheel.
I don't know what Donnie does, I think Scott could probably remember off the top. What did we pay for the police car when you had the, wheels?
$50 a room.
$50 a week.
Very cheap, actually. That's including standing and everything.
Reconditioned around.
Because when I took the Explorer to them, they were pretty good.
Oh, okay.
Scott's were steel, weren't they? Weren't all yours steel? Steel wheels?
No,
No?
the Crown Vic I had them done, steel, and the Explorer, they're aluminum.
Oh,
And they'll part apart in different colors and,
It's starting to oxidize real bad with the wheel weights are, it's starting to look like crap, so.
yeah.
yeah, but I've had those Explorer ones on there for 3 years now. He's gonna spin them off here pretty soon to put new tires on it, but it'll be interesting to see
How they look on the inside, yeah.
Still have 5 minutes, that clock's 5 minutes back.
No. Never, and then the one she shot and missed, he's never come back.
She never did see it again, Rob?
No, I don't think he's coming back.
No, he knows what that meant.
Yeah. You see that one right between his legs?
I was hoping maybe some, he'd get stupid and come back, but
No.
he ain't gonna.
Rob, you gonna sub pool next weekend, or next week? You gonna sub pool league next week?
No.
So I don't have to?
That's Wednesday, right?
Yeah. I think all of it. I think we got a 3-week stretch there. I
I
subbed
did
for,
that 1 year, it's
I
just.
subbed for him once earlier this year, and I won't be wanting to sub every time. And I like playing pool, don't get me wrong, but no supervisor on call, so who knows when my phone rings. We got 2 weeks of it right now, deer season, and this week, covering for everybody else.
We talked about.
Don't get better than literally a day out. Throw my phone out in the parking lot.
Speaker.
He'll be here
Every other week, and then I swap it, so he wants to take, the other supervisor wants to take vacation. I think he's coming for it. We work well together.
Church in Bel Air brought us something called
It's
the
24 hours, they
Church.
sell
So I
every
left his
week
on
when
the
you're
counter,
out.
I think. I didn't realize what it was. So when he finally got here, picked up, it's all moldy. I thought, God, I knew it was gonna just mold out.
Yeah, they backed off now, but at one point here, 8 weeks ago, I had 13 meetings.
Here, get your truck.
Yeah.
Simple fix, sir.
Just put that one down.
It's like our training, the we go to like safety training. We got
Park it
2
back behind
months
the
of
trees.
this. And we're there
Don't even know
3
why I
times a
think-
week, same thing, 2 hours a day, and doing all the rest. It's unreal.
As long as I get the blade.
Yeah, but you don't wanna be
The
doing
only
it.
time it's worse, you know, that's for the shutter on.
No, I'm just saying, we gotta do what we can.
They just buy the book, they have no clear. Just go out and pay by the hour.
That's why I took this job, I got rid of the salary job, salary plus overtime, so.
I know. It doesn't work it that way. Well, I like my hourly, I got minimums, my phone rings, it's 3 hours. I can get a 5-minute phone call, I get paid 3 hours. But if you're out 4, I don't get 4, you know, so, it has its ups and downs. And when I gotta go out, that makes it worse. I like it when I can just sit on my couch or in bed and say, yeah, thanks.
We're about 30 seconds away. I'll call the meeting to order. Rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Here. 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 The agenda's gonna have a couple of changes. Nuisance, new business nuisance ordinance, we can scratch that. We didn't think there was a.
We don't have it on our agenda.
Oh, all right, you scratched
It was never on our agenda.
it? Okay, very good.
No, you were going to add it tonight.
I was gonna add it, but now I'm gonna take it away, because there's no issue, so. Did you, what you got then? We got an easement issue for an action item B, the Trout easement issue. I will explain that in my report. And action item of accepting Thayer's resignation. Action item to appoint Brian Patton to replace Thayer. That's all I have. Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, I'd like to add one, would be under E, reimbursement, for campground incident.
Anybody else? Any motion to accept the agenda as amended?
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
Second.
Moved and supported. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Approval of the minutes, October 14, 2015. motion to accept the minutes? Move to accept the minutes of October meeting. Any support?
Support.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Any public comment? Report, Scott?
Okay, thank you. Hopefully everybody got a chance to look at the report. Really simple month, pretty standard. Couple highlights, couple meetings, went to, little warranty work on the patrol car, one of the trim pieces fell off, so they had to put a new trim piece on it, nothing major, so. Yeah, I think we're at today 3,500 miles on it, so. I actually, when I was up there, asked them to change the oil, and they said, well, we don't do that until 5,000 miles, so. New philosophy, so. But everything else is going good. Any questions?
I have one. We're only getting 8 miles to the gallon on that car?
Not necessarily. I mean, I can show you the difference. It depends on how I fill it up. Like if I fill it up 1 month, I mean, let me show you on my dailies, I'll show you.
It didn't sound good.
Well, no, it depends on where I'd actually, because I'll actually go 3 or 4 days without putting gas in the car. So technically I could be driving up until empty the first day of the month, fill it up, which logs on this month.
Do you log idle time?
No, I don't.
Cause that would have a.
The computer will do that.
It's got that.
The car will do it. It'll actually tell you how much idle time, how much it's been driving.
Right.
That car probably gets, I think it's 16, 17 miles per gallon. The other car got about 12, 13, so, I mean, around town, you're not getting that big. On the highway, you probably get a little bit better, so. But yeah, there's a feature that'll do that, so.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Thank you. Sam?
Everybody should have a copy of the DPW report. Last month I talked to you guys a little bit about the bad water samples. Of course, the day after the meeting, we were all clean. I told you I had 2 more samples I was waiting for. They'd come back clean, so we're tested out of the violation, so it's no longer a violation. I do have to report it in my consumer confidence report, which will be the end of 2015's consumer confidence report. Larry got a copy of a letter from the DEQ, which I have a copy. I haven't read mine yet. What it is was I had my yearly sanitary water survey. Bill sat in on one a 3 years ago with me on one. So just that, I haven't read it yet, but I feel very confident when he left that we were going to have a very good report. So I'm sure it is a good report. Larry, have you read it?
I read it. I didn't understand some of it, but it was, yeah, positive.
The only thing that was really noted on it that's going to cost the village some money is a backup generator, which we figured that in our wastewater study when we started that 4 years ago, I believe we started it. And that was one of the first projects that we were going to replace was a backup generator. And it is noted in that sanitary survey with the DEQ.
And we're supposed to be shutting down one well.
No, we have another well up on top of the hill, which is number 4, I believe, that has to be abandoned yet. Still got to be plugged, per DEQ standards. I had a quote on it last year at $1,900 to plug it. I'm sure it's going to come back at the same price this year, but I'm going to wait until 2016-17 budget, and we're going to go ahead and try to get it budgeted in at that point to get that well plugged. Any questions on the report?
Yeah. How did the brush pickup go?
I think I wrote down 12 people, and as it turned out, it was 14, because I totally missed 2 people. They called and said, hey, you gonna pick my brush up? Yep, we'll get there. So, but 14 people utilized it. So I definitely want to do it again in the spring of the year, because we've had good turnout, especially in the spring. Spring, we're around about 30 people. So.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Thank you. Correspondence, got a letter from the Paddle Antrim organizer saying, thanking the community and the business people in Central Lake for doing what they did and or what we did, and it was a success. over 100 participants, and 80% of them came from out of the area, so it drew some people in, and for the first year, it was a pretty good event. So that's all I have as far as correspondence. Committee reports, Rob?
I've got nothing. Sidewalks are good, Rushton's done, and nothing on the lights.
Sewer and water, Rob?
Nothing other than what Sam's got on his report.
Okay. Bill?
The Law Enforcement Committee met on 22nd October, and we discussed the part-time position that's been vacated and decided that we would start a process of interviewing and advertise for a position. And we've gotten 5 applications so far, resumes. And we'll continue to accept applications for a couple more weeks and see what comes in. Then we'll bring recommendation to the board.
Melissa?
I wasn't here last month, so I don't have much to report. The only thing I want to mention to you all, which I'm sure you know, is the Governor's Rising Tide Program. We've met 3 times. There's certain criteria that the board presented, or the task force presented to us, that on the next meeting they're going to give a written work plan. And at that time, I think it'll be good for all of us to review the status where we're at, so I'll bring that next month.
Okay. I'll talk a little bit about that as well. And happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
Finance personnel, Joe?
Not a whole lot. Looked over revenue and expenditure pretty extensively this month. We're up 17.2% or 02% in our 101 revenues. All the funds pretty well look sustaining well. Other than that, helped Rob and Leela put together some financials for the grant project. Just looking through back histories and things worked on before, so. Other than that, just the amendment that I made to the action items for reimbursement of the campground that I can discuss a little later.
Okay.
Joe, I just have a question. I'm looking through these, and almost each unemployment under expenditures, there's a like minus 24% or minus whatever. What's the cause of that?
From looking back, we expected to drop part of the unemployment for this year, which unfortunately whoever collected at that time, which I don't remember exactly the year prior, still collected some that added to our reimbursement for this year. While them are over, they still fall underneath the fund balances or expected of each fund, so therefore no changes needed to be made.
Okay, and then if we're looking at account street fund 202, we have a 668%, where the budget was 500, but we really spent 3,800.
What is it?
I don't
It's
know, that's what I'm
miscellaneous.
asking, it's
You're-
miscellaneous
It's a
income.
street fund, 202.
Yep, it's a 202, 6940 miscellaneous income. I can't tell you.
Is that income in?
Yes.
That's gasoline from the township purchasing it, I'm sure.
Okay.
Does that sound right, Rachel?
I don't have an exact answer of what that was, because I didn't research it. Revenues to me are always good, so I'm not as much concerned about them as I am the expenditures.
Well, we like to know where the money's coming from, of course. So the unemployment, that's based on one person not doing their unemployment right, or someone kept drawing unemployment and we didn't?
Somebody was entitled to more unemployment than we expected.
Okay.
It does. Our unemployment, because we are a reimburser and not a contributor, we are always, I believe it's 2 years behind in our payment plans for reimbursement.
So what we're looking at here is a couple of years old.
Correct.
As far as that line item is concerned.
Yes, on that line item. Thank you.
For each unemployment one, right?
It's just split out.
Yeah, we just break it out into each fund, so they pay their fair share of unemployment that, as it was collected.
Thank you.
Leila? Leila?
Nothing new on the parks, except the fact that we have been working, we had a meeting and figuring out how much it's gonna cost us if the prices go up, and I would like to have Joe give you the report on the amount of money that it's gonna cost and the possibility that it may not cost that much. So Joe, you go ahead.
All right, looking at the funding for the Thurston Park grant, initially, the total project cost was estimated $250,000. With that, we had a 35% match into that. The grant amount requested that was given to us by the DNR was $162,500, which means we had to match $87,500. We then broke that up into, after talking with the auditors at the time and finding that we could be fiscally responsible, that was a doable number for us. We brought it into that. $56,000 would have come from the general fund, and $31,500 was expected to come from the DPW if they were able to do that work. Again, after talking with the auditors, they said if the DPW wasn't able, we still were financially capable of funding that full amount. As time has moved on with the offset and things that have set us back in the grant process, obtaining the property or title to the property on the north end, that has taken some time. It came back that there's an estimated 30% increase. Now that's on the high end, we're hoping. Hopefully it'll come in a lot less. In doing so, that boosted our total project cost to roughly $325,000. Again, the DNR is only gonna grant us $162,500. With that, we're still hoping for $31,500 from the DPW if possible. Again, if they can't, at the time, that number is still the same. Auditor said that we should be good with that. What has changed now is the general fund before was going to kick out $56,000 from fund balance. Now, because of what we have done in the campground in years past, taking it to a standalone fund and generating the revenues that we have from there, the campground at this time, which it didn't have the opportunity to do this before for us, has now got a fund balance of roughly $85,000 in the last 2 years. Or 3 years, I should say. So the campground can fund, being an enterprise fund, can fund $85,000 comfortably out of that, knowing that will leave us roughly $1,650 in fund balance in the campground for unexpected things that we don't budget for in our normal stuff. That also let us go back to, I talked with Rachel, we looked at the reservation system, and the campground currently has just over $40,000 in revenues and reservations for next year, which more than covers our operating expense by about $5,000, $6,000. So I was fairly comfortable in talking with Rod and putting these numbers together that we could deplete that fund balance by $85,000 in the campground and still move forward very comfortably. That took us to a $10,000 less contribution from our 101 fund balance. Instead of $56,000, we will now only be pulling $46,000 from the fund balance.
Our campground has done real well.
So what did you say the left in the campground, 106?
Right now, if we pull this full $85,000 out of there right now to do this grant project, it'll leave us about $1,500, $1,600 roughly. And that's just in the fund balance. We budget off of our projected intake or revenues for the year, and as I said, we are already over $40,000 in reservations for next year, which more than covers our operating expense by roughly $5,000. Over the last 3 years, we have averaged $25,000 to $30,000 of revenue over expenditure in the campground since we took it to a standalone fund. So with that being true, if we could count on that, we would stand to put another $30,000 next year in the fund balance of the campground.
So the labor and the village contribution is 77,500, but we're saying the campground is gonna put in 85, is that the 30% difference, or what's that?
The campground is going to make up a lot of that 30%. The 30% goes right into the overall cost, 325,000 from 200. We were 250,000, we're now 325.
But if the campground is gonna contribute 85,000, these two totals are only 77,000, so what's the?
I'm not following you with your question.
Your 30%, I think I can answer this. Total project cost potentially can go from 250 to 325. That's $75,000 more, okay? He's taken 10,000 away from the general fund, which means that's 85,000 now. And that, the campground contributions, potentially 85,000 to cover that cost. If in fact the 30% rises.
And that's high.
And we had an initial 35% match. And so now with this 30% increase that they're talking, that's a 65% match, if I'm running that correctly, Rod?
Yeah?
I was hoping it isn't gonna be a 30%. Right.
Oh.
Here's open.
Hoping it doesn't go that high, you're right. Thank you, Rod, or Joe. Sorry. Okay, yep, that's
Okay.
it. That's
Thank
it.
you. My report. Project Rising Tide, as Melissa said, has met 3 times, once since our last meeting. The first two sessions provided them with information about our community, and they took that all in. They came back and said, here's 5 things that we heard you say. We want you to prioritize them, which is what happened last week in our meeting. And they left to produce an action plan for their #1 priority, which revolves around trying to create jobs. The beauty of all of this, as they said, they're building the plane as they're flying it. And my question to them was, if we need grant monies to implement this plan that you're proposing, does that mean we have first priority? We're building this plan as we go, with smiles on their faces. So I think that it's a favorable position to be in as far as the community. Other communities are wondering why we got selected and they didn't. So everybody's watching what happens to us. They have a stake, they don't want to see this fail. We have a stake because we need the help, we would like the help, and I think we're going to get it. So they should come back in a couple of weeks and present their action plan, and we can discuss how it will go from there, so.
Said 5 things. You said jobs is one of the other 4.
Good question, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
I got it.
You got it.
Don't worry about it now. We'll wait till the action plan comes out. I think we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Establishing a brand was one of them. Help me brainstorm, Melissa.
I got them all.
I think it's a valid question.
No, I just,
Branding, agro-tourism, jobs, job development, and they're all not exclusive, they're all intertwined.
There are 3 that I wrote down. The 1, 2, 3 were jobs, downtown revitalization, and housing. They're looking at funding, responsible parties, timeframes, everything else are recorded. I have a recording of it, I didn't write it down, so.
Okay, I got a letter from the property owner who owns the building behind Jiraco's. Bill Garrett is his name, he's an attorney. The property's under the name Central City. And He's attempting to buy the Harthorn building, which is directly to the east of his building. And initially, he thought there was an 18-foot easement in between the buildings that the village possessed. But as I went through and read the legal descriptions on everybody and mapped out the map which you have, the easement is the west 18 feet of lot 3, of the north 80 feet of lot 3. And what happens is the east wall of that building is on the easement. And he's asked if we would relinquish 10 feet of that 18 feet. So the easement's no longer, or the building's no longer on the easement. And which leaves us, there's a water line that goes in there. And that 8 feet, Sam and I have gone out and measured it, should be ample, enough room if something goes bad with the water line.
Who owns lot 3?
Gordy Hartman. Well, the post office owns the rest of lot 3. Post office owns 7, 8, the south, 20 feet of that part of lot 4, and then the south 20 feet of lot 3, and the remainder to the east.
Correctly then, you're saying this is what he wants us to relinquish?
He wants us to relinquish 10 feet of that, which splits that.
And so the post office owns lot 3.
Correct.
How can we relinquish post office property to them?
We're not relinquishing property, we're relinquishing the easement for the water line.
Okay.
We have property, the property is not in question.
Okay. What does, I guess my question is, what does that do for the drive-through to the post office?
Absolutely
Is there plans to build? Is there plans to do anything else? If we relinquish that easement, can he then build later and diminish the post office?
He can't go any bigger than what the foot of the building is right now.
Okay.
8 foot of that building is physically on that easement right now. That's
Okay.
It's been there for,
forever.
Yeah. Somebody goofed when they wrote up the easement description, or it wasn't surveyed, so they just said, we'll take the 18, west 18 feet. There's a sewer line that's going in that south 20 feet of those lots.
So will that change the plat mapping?
No. All we're doing is relinquishing the west 10 feet of that 18-foot easement. It doesn't change property lines at all.
What's his,
Oh, sorry, go.
No, go ahead.
You keep using the term building, that's not a building, that's a shell. I mean, you can't,
Well,
Is
he's gonna fix it up, is what he says, so. that's
is there any way we
fine.
can have money put in escrow, have them fix it up? Because I didn't wanna give up this easement, and all of a sudden, we have to look at that for another 25 years. All of a sudden, we're in the power position right now to say, we want that cleaned up. You clean it up and tear it out of there, we'll give you the easement. My concern is that we're gonna give up an easement, and all of a sudden, nothing comes of it, he flips it, and all of a sudden, and we're still looking at it, and he's a speculator. Speculating that this four-sided structure without a roof is gonna sit there. That's my only concern. Well, actually, that's first concern. Second concern, what ramifications for other lots? Because I know there have been people in the audience that are always talking about their easement and corridors where cars are running up and down their utility corridors. Are
does
we,
this set precedence?
thank you, that was the word I was looking for. Precedence.
The building's on the easement, so we, in essence, if something goes bad with the water line, we can't use that property anyway because we'd be tearing down their building. I don't think we have a right to do that. So if we do have a right to do it, then we're setting ourselves up for a lawsuit. And this guy is an attorney, so.
Was our water line there before his building?
Can't answer that. No, the potato warehouse was there first,
Yeah.
before the post office was there.
Yeah.
That was a potato warehouse, huh?
Yep.
Yeah.
Learn something new every day.
There was one, there was one across the street as well.
What he wants to do is fix somebody's mistake in the,
Right, that's what he's doing, is it should have never been granted where the building exists anyway, so.
agree with what Rob's saying, like, what can we do to ensure that it's gonna be fixed before we give it to them? I kinda like that
I
idea.
don't think we can say, I don't think we can
I don't
hold
think
that
the
over his
hardware-
head, that sounds a little bit like,
Why can't we
Yeah.
say fix your building or we're not giving you property? And right now, it's not reasonable.
It is.
well, I'm sure we all do,
Yeah.
but, you know, it's the building sitting on something nobody can use.
But he can use it, and he wants it.
Then we want it fixed.
Your leverage is the zoning, you've got them under zoning to fix it, so.
But we've had that and it hasn't.
It's
been
gone
fixed.
nowhere.
Sure, but I can also
He's-
point to previous.
And he's
zoning
intending
board
to
never
fix it
investigated.
up according
The
to
only
his
reason it's-
statement.
the only
So
reason-
will we piss him off to start with, or we just let him proceed and on hope that he
On good
That's
Well,
faith.
what can we get a
That's a
good
good
faith
thing.
from them even? I mean, even a good faith to say, hey, this is what I wanna do. Show us a drawing of what you wanna do. Show us what your intent is to it. Let us work from that. 'Cause right now, it's just give me the property.
Can you buy it without the easement?
no, the easement runs with the land.
So if he doesn't get the
regardless,
easement, he may not buy
so
it.
He probably won't buy it, yeah,
So
that's
there you
essentially what he's saying.
So either way, it's gonna look like crap if the guy buys it or not. Recently, we had given Gory some leeway to get it cleaned up, and he was working on getting it cleaned up. A couple other people have looked at buying it, so we're kind of, you know, in all best interest of the village. If somebody buys it and fixes it up, that's where we're, you know, the best part for the village, I think, so.
Can I just say something, because I was involved in it, you talk about somebody's good faith, it's been in good faith for like 3 years now. It's a blighted building, and I agree with Rob, the village now has, however it works out, condemn the darn thing, demand it be torn down, force Gordy's hand, what I'm saying, I think Scott will agree. There's been a lot of leeway given right along, and that building still sits there getting worse. You got leverage now, I agree with
For
Rob.
3 years, it's been sitting there blighted, you say?
Way longer than that, but it was considered blighted, and what, 2 years ago or something like that?
Scott's been working it for well over 2 years, as long as he was showing.
Oh, yeah, it's been 3 years, you're saying, that we've been trying to push this thing forward and get him to fix it up, and it's
He's not
snail's
done a
pace.
thing.
But if you're talking about a new person buying it, that's his intent. I mean, he bought the one to the west of it, that's exactly what he did. His intention is to buy this one to do the exact same thing. If you look at the two buildings, obviously one's nicer than the other, he's going to make the one look like that, but he's not going to do it if he doesn't have ownership of it.
Well, it seems if it was his intent, he'd have no reason with writing it on a piece of paper to agree to it.
Sure, but if he purchases it today knowing that, and maybe something from the village saying that, you know, if we do this, we expect this to be done and, you know, and then it's easier for me to say, wow, you bought the building, you knew it's in disrepair, I can go after you now for the zoning part.
That may be
I mean,
a
there's
good
your leverage.
question for Brian, is to ask him, is there something that we can legally write up to say, we'll give you it if you show us that good faith?
Or just with the wordage that you're buying a building that is currently in violation of zoning, and if it doesn't get addressed, you will be held. I mean, so then he has no surprise.
He's bought the-
This is an information item now, right? This is in
Right,
the
yeah.
president's report. This is not a voting
Right.
thing, this is
Right.
everybody's talking
But
We'll
about it.
we'll come back to
See,
it.
it's in the action items, though.
Okay, so you got it?
Yep.
You're clear as to what's going on
He
anyway.
just bought the building, he just bought that
Yeah.
lot beside it, right?
He has not bought it
He
yet.
bought this one.
He wants us to
Yeah.
think we
Gary
Yeah,
owns,
it was a while ago.
this is looking.
Yeah, that's what he's
looking
bought,
for.
but I can't see why he couldn't just get back on his own property.
Well, cause he
Combine them
have to
together.
rip out 20% of his building.
That's his problem.
Why don't we just say, Gordy, tear it down, fix it up, this other guy wants to buy it.
We'll talk about it under action items, so.
Okay,
You've received the revenue expense report. We're 68% through our budget year, 32%. I asked Rachel to include that so you can review it. Next month meeting, we will discuss budget. So I encourage you to study what we have there, bring your questions, and that's kind of the first step forward to next year's budget. So that's why you got it. Received a letter of recommendation from Mr. Thayer, a resignation, not a letter of resignation. Resignation, I'm
Give you a
sorry.
recommendation.
And we will address that under our action items as well. Gordy Frazier brought to my attention that Lake Street, the plat of Lake Street that extends into the park was never abandoned. So the bathrooms and everything on it are on the right of way. So I asked Brian Graham to research it, and he concurred that that has never been done. So I went back to Jennifer Hodges and I said, see if you can't get DEQ to look the other way for this potential problem. The village owns the street, has always owned the street, but the fact that we built on it and didn't abandon the part that's built doesn't comply with whatever regulations that they require. And I haven't heard back yet as to where it stands. I'm not sure that the DNR is aware that that's the issue. Gordy Frazier's the owner, has brought it to my attention. So that's something that we may have to deal with down the road here. So I bring it to your attention tonight.
And I also emailed Jennifer Hodges about July 31 of 16, that's when our project has to be completed. Right. So we're all on that, that was in this package here.
If that's required, we'd have to hire the attorney to file the lawsuit to change the plat and go through that process, and it's probably a three to 4 month process. The beauty of it, there's only probably 10 property owners that are within 300 feet. So it shouldn't take too long to go through that process. I just think it's a waste of money because we own the street to begin with, so.
Can I just say, just because I looked into stuff like that, Larry, and it might be a good question for Brian Graham. I believe, and I don't know if that's the situation, if the same person owns the property on both sides of that, the legal process becomes less, I think. Like, you don't have to petition all those property owners in the court.
We would have to petition at least the one that built the new house.
Does he own,
He owns
he joins that property? Okay.
And the house behind it more than likely does, but I'm not positive. So, it's just, I don't understand it, but that's what happens.
Rob, did you get an answer back from Jennifer on the July 31st thing yet?
No, I did not. That was Tuesday, and you scanned the copy, then I sent it off to her. So.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I have in my report.
Larry, I did have one question. It was a couple months or last month when it came back that this was gonna be a 30% increase in our budget, to the grant. Well, it looks as though that's not gonna be troublesome for us now. We had asked you to contact the auditors to see what they thought of it still, and were we still within a reasonable amount in our.
I don't remember you asking me to do that,
Oh, okay.
but I did not do it.
But, well, and I was just wondering if you had gotten an answer from what we found out with the budgeting, it really doesn't matter, I just was curious.
Okay. Approval of the bills. Prepaids of $65,50.91, payroll $54,42.09, payables $10,815.57 for a total of $22,808.57.
Can I make a motion to pay the bills as presented?
Second.
Been moved and supported. Any further discussion? All in favor? Nope. Roll call.
Bobby,
Yes.
Chapman,
Yes.
Hart,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Tyler,
Yep.
Donna,
Yes. Yes. No new business, action items. We have an application from Chad Munger. He wants to put a tasting room for his Mammoth Distillery and the corner store that just was vacated by the treasure chest. And we're required to give our blessing for him in order to do that as far as the state is concerned, Liquor Control Commission.
So the township also had to do the same thing and they approved it?
They didn't have to do it, they did it for him when he was gonna be outside of the village.
Okay.
And he's gonna now be in the inside of the village, if all goes well.
I think this this has some huge potential to it. It's almost like Shorts and Beller, but for Central Lake, I think it's a great thing, so.
What's the difference between a tasting room and a bar?
Yeah, that's what I'm putting my
That's
answer.
Liquor Control Commission, I don't know what it is.
I can,
Is that, Scott, go
the
ahead.
difference is they can't sell it, you can't go in there and buy a glass, you can taste, sample it, and then you can buy something to take with you, so you can't just sit there and
So
drink it.
people aren't hanging out there, they're just shopping there.
Correct. Well, no, what happened is when, based on Joe's question, when the township approved him, that's what established his original license. So he'll have where he makes it out, where, back where the Blue Pelican is, or where Farmer
I
Express
know
used
where
to
it's
be.
at. So people can drink out there all they want, right? But here they just gotta buy it to go?
They always taste the sample there too. It's a
Same
different
thing
thing.
out there?
Correct. And his license, if I'm correct on this, he continues to have the same license, but he actually adds part to his license, so he can actually have two separate places. Chris Corbett did the same thing when he had the original Pelican, and then he has the room, and then he also had the restaurant at the end and stuff like that. So it doesn't, it changes the type of license, but it doesn't change the fact that he currently has a license. And then liquor control just wants the village's blessing or approval, knowing that, they're not just gonna dump
Was
a
there a
liquor
cost to
establishment
this
in there.
guy to do this?
What's that?
Is there a cost for this?
For liquor control, it does. Yeah, oh, yeah.
Not us, just,
Yeah, they don't do anything for free. So,
I think it's great.
I've been out to the tasting room there, and it's really nice. They do,
Where's this
it's
tasting room?
It's almost like a chemistry lab, and you really learn a lot. It's like Melissa said, it's not people hanging out there. Then, once you taste the spirit and everything else and the different distilling as it goes through, then you go to another area, and there's T-shirts, and you can buy packaged liquor there. I don't know, can they probably be able to sell packaged liquor
yeah, you
here?
can sell liquor to go.
To go, yeah. And then, he had all kinds of other stuff out in this area, and it was just a really, really neat thing. But obviously, you couldn't crack it,
Right.
so you had to be on the way with it.
I'd make a motion to grant the application for Mammoth Distillery.
Support. Been moved and supported, any further discussion? We'll roll call so we can count it. They're asking for the yeas and the nays.
Bobby,
Yes.
Chapman,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Bear,
Yes.
Tyler.
Yep.
Zollner.
yes.
Yes. I think it's good for us to.
Absolutely.
Work. Okay, we're back to the easement. I would have to ask Brian, I guess.
I'm not against it, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm concerned that we're gonna do this and it doesn't fix us as what Rob was saying. I have a concern that eventually it could do something with that drive-through, but you assured me that can't happen. I guess I would ask, can we table this till next month, till we get a recommendation from Brian and what his?
I hate to see us be the
Delay the
impediment.
guy for a month if he
Right.
wants to buy it tomorrow.
If,
Been delaying him for
if
3
Brian
years.
said, if Brian says that we can put a stipulation on that, that we will relinquish the 10 feet if in fact he makes the improvements to the building to make it functional again. It needs a new roof big time, and probably doors. So,
It needs room.
Well,
It
so
doesn't
what if
have
the guy says, no, I'm not doing it, so then we're just stuck, we're back in the same spot we're
or-
already in now.
What if he tears it down with that? From my perspective, that'd be an
That'd be
improvement.
great.
So,
If he does as well as he did with the other building he bought, he'll be fine.
Your stipulation just says he has to come in compliance with current zoning.
Well, but he should know that, right? I mean,
I would think so. And we can put that stipulation, I'll call Brian, and if that, I can check back with 2 or 3 of you for it.
well,
Yeah,
can we vote on it tonight with
Yeah, that's what
the,
I'm
with
trying to,
the
that's what I'm trying to get to.
What,
agreement? Yeah.
how many feet does that leave for us?
8
on that?
feet.
For our water line,
For our water line.
What about the driveway?
that's not ours, that's the post office's.
And that's where the water line is
That's where
underneath
the
the
water-
post office driveway, so it doesn't matter.
But there's only 8 foot across there?
there's 8 feet left, there's 18 feet right now. If we give him the 10,
That'll,
But not 18 communities and buildings out there.
yeah, we can't use 18 feet of easement because the building's on it.
10 foot of.
It bothers me.
building.
If the line breaks, it doesn't matter, we're gonna go ahead and dig it up and repair it. That's reality.
It's not very good. We're thankful for
I
that.
really want to see some, but I understand what the guy's trying to do. I've been there.
Larry, say again what your proposed. Just that we approve this pending Brian Graham's okay, that we can put the stipulation on it, which I think we can, because he does have to comply with zoning, though the previous owner didn't comply, so can he say, well, since he didn't comply, why am I being forced to comply?
That's exactly right.
So,
And so if Brian comes back and says, no, we can't, then do what?
You say just roll dice?
and then I'll table it until next, I'll just tell him, we can't do it this month.
Even if it's just a reminder, you have to come in compliance with it.
Right.
Would be the fair thing. You know, and he wasn't allowed to get away with it, and I can't speak on behalf of other zoning people, but we kind of were just kind of like, try to do what you can, the best you can, in order to be sympathetic, or at least
Away the
human about
property
it.
that's underneath the building already.
We're not giving away the property,
Well,
we're giving
we're
away the
relinquishing,
easement.
yeah, right, we're relinquishing the
Easement.
easement that is truly already under the building.
Correct,
so we're not giving him the property, just the easement.
just the easement, we don't own the property.
To make a motion that we give this man his easement.
And moved,
Based on what you had just about, bring up to the zoning.
I gotta say, I don't think it's a violation of zoning, it's blighted.
or blight.
Zoning doesn't address blight, just so you make sure you
Thank
address
you.
it right. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
Thank you,
yes,
blighting.
that's correct,
It violates the blight ordinance,
That's
not the zoning ordinance.
correct.
So the village probably has a lot of leverage there, because even if he has it, it's, when he owns it, he now owns a blighted building. And you
The
can
other guys
force
owned
his
it
hand.
though too, and
But that was because there was some nice stuff going on because of the situation. I really think it was, because of the financial hardship, you know what I mean? But
Sure,
it's a different position now. This guy knows he's buying a blighted building, that has to be dealt with.
if he buys it on
You
the
can force
onset
his
at a
hand.
discounted price, knowing that, then there's no problem holding him eligible, or liable to take care of that, so it's a different situation.
Well, we can't assume that the guy is just gonna buy and let it sit there for 10 years, or he's not
I
gonna do
have,
anything.
I
to
have
it.
his letter. This is the first letter, he thought the easement was between the two buildings, but it was on the other side of Hardhorn Building. He says, I have an agreement to purchase from Gordon Hardhorn the land at 7951 Maple, a dilapidated warehouse with a caved-in roof. The parcel itself is 80 feet deep, north to south, 66 feet wide, east to west on Maple. The north wall of the building is situated near the north boundary of the property. Its east and west walls are approximately 8 feet from the property boundaries, which is not true. He was assuming that in this letter that the easement was on the west side of the building, and it isn't. It was the other way. The problem is at the westernmost part of the property, blah, blah, blah. If I purchase the property, I will completely clean up the premises, inside and outside the structure, put a new roof on the structure, and otherwise improve it. Please advise if the village is amenable to relinquishing its easement.
You already got it,
So-
right?
He already told you what he's gonna do to it.
that would have been nice to have at the beginning of this.
You made the
I'm
motion.
sorry. The motion's been made,
I'll support
I'll
it.
second.
but with the stipulation that we
You got it, right?
must
I
comply.
get it, I think it's good, I think
Okay.
it's good.
Okay, we got a motion on the floor.
Yep.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
All right.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Very good. It probably would have helped. I didn't want to confuse it either.
Yeah.
We got a letter from Rod that he will officially resign from the village council effective 12/1. And
You're
it's been a
gonna
pleasure,
miss the
sir.
December meeting?
I'm sorry?
I said, so we'll miss the December meeting?
You will miss the December meeting. And
So you're a council person till November 30th?
effective on 12/1, yes. That would be the case.
That would bring up my question, the legality that we went through in 2011, when Brian Patton resigned, and during also with the recall of Walt Russell, can we legally accept a resignation prior to his leaving?
Well, it was a stink last
Why
time,
don't you just
remember?
make
I-
it official today?
I don't think
Why
we can
wait till the
actually
first?
accept his resignation until after tenure, or after his term has actually ended due to the fact that he is a elected official. Even though he's saying he's gonna resign, as Brian, if we remember correctly, Walt Russell at the time of the president, Brian wrote a letter to the council, declaring his intent to leave. It went to the lawyers, it came back that you cannot replace him until the time that he said the intent was to take place.
That's right. See, if Rod was to resign
Oh.
tonight,
You can accept it, but
That's
you
what I
can't
was
replace him.
saying.
you
We can't replace him
you
until
can't
after.
make an, action to replace Rod
Till he's
until
done.
after Rod is gone.
Okay,
That's
that's fine.
I
If
Yeah.
I remember correctly, yeah, okay.
Yep, that's how it works.
So now it'll be this
So-
month, next it'll be January before Brian can get in because Rod's not resigning until the 1st of November.
Correct.
But if he resigned tonight, we could vote Brian in and he could be placed at the next council meeting.
That Roger already changed
Well,
it.
There you go.
Well,
I don't know.
for everybody to benefit from it, I'll change it
His
right
term
now.
wouldn't start until
January either way.
this year.
So Brian wouldn't start
Well,
until,
I was, no,
Brian would start in December, wouldn't he?
Let's stop. Rod, are you willing to resign tonight?
Sure.
All right, now. We can
Well, I don't
appoint.
wanna cause any problems.
I'm just trying to figure out how we can do this.
Exactly.
We got the hell of
Well,
a
we're
stink
looking
of
at,
it, like
we're looking at January.
Want to come back.
That's
But he'd
right.
already been
No
replaced.
Why,
Well,
if
we-
in fact
we
he
accepted his resignation.
officially
That's
resigned
what-
tonight, then we can't, what you're saying is we can't appoint somebody else tonight?
He's not done until after tonight's meeting.
The whole issue with Mike Roach and that was Mike wanted to, if I remember, Mike wanted to come back.
Right, and
He
that
said he
was
had
where
the
I'm
right
going.
to, but
But
Brian Grant
you
said
have
he
the
couldn't
opportunity
come
to
back
rescind
because the
between now.
council already acted on his resignation.
Yeah.
Brian.
Which is what you're doing
said-
tonight, so Rogers won't be able to say tomorrow he wants to come back, because you accepted it and acted on it.
I
By
contacted
replacing-
Brian,
What did
and
he say,
what Brian actually said on that is he hadn't officially resigned until the board accepts his resignation, acts on it.
Which we had
We
done.
did,
Right.
and then he said, you're completely free to do whatever you want then, but then
We're talking two different times. I'm talking when Brian resigned and he wrote the letter of intent that postponed his
Well, he's
intent to
going
resign.
change his date.
Now it changes when that he's ready to do it tonight. That changes
Ron
everything.
says I'm out of here at 8 o'clock and he's gone, and at 8:05,
If we
6
act
other
on
people
that-
appoint.
then it's over.
Then we can accept it, yes.
Then we can-
You'd be correct there.
Yeah.
But the way this is written, we couldn't.
So just change
Well,
the date.
Yeah, I can change it, cause nobody's made a motion on it, so.
That's right.
over.
Well, that way.
Come on, Rod, get the hell out of the building.
You have the original?
Oh, look at that Tammy.
That way you.
We'll just change ours to what you're gonna,
There you go.
Effective
There
immediately.
allow him.
you go. All right, we're going.
Okay, now,
Act on Brian. Tonight.
now I'm gonna postpone this action and bring up the reimbursement for campground first.
So we're not doing the Brian thing?
Not yet, not until we,
Shift your
but
gears.
I'm gonna postpone this, and then we can do the Brian thing follow.
And he can vote on it.
And he can vote on the reimbursement.
Oh, okay.
So we're switching
So,
B and C.
so we're switching B,
Just gonna
we're
flip flop that.
We're switching
E and C.
E and C.
E and
and D.
E and moving them down.
Yeah, we're just moving E up right now.
E to C.